Good morning, everyone. Thank you. So, I'm here to propose that education is that lever. It is that urgent matter which is going to solve every problem. As Nelson Mandela said, it's the most powerful weapon to change this world. Move over to the demographics of India. Less than 25 years of age, we have 60 crore, 600 million youth who are less than 25 years of age. That is twice the population of the US, since we've been bringing US into our discussions since morning. My dream is to see this 600 million students absolutely innovative, armed with the right kind of education, going out there and making a change. Now, what education could be several things. Is it something that one gives you the skills to earn one's livelihood? Is it something that develops intelligence, character, social awareness? Is it an activity that puts one on the path of self-discovery? Well, why not all of the above? But what then must be this education that we achieve all of the above? Important thing is for education to be contextual. Unfortunately, be it in the universities of the Thar Desert or Cherrapunji of Meghalaya, we follow the same curriculum, which is equally irrelevant. I am founding a university in Ladakh. The context, which is very different from the plains of India, not perhaps in this room, of course, where it is as cold as it is in Ladakh. Yeah. The temperatures range from -30 to +35. Life survives on glacier melts. It is trans-Himalayan. It's a mountain desert because the rain clouds do not reach there. It's at 12,000 feet above sea level. So what should education be there? Can it be the same as it is in Delhi? Unfortunately, it was. Though it is its own distinct civilization, its distinct problems, its distinct culture, but because the education was the same as was being given in Delhi or Chennai, till about 20 years ago, 95% of students would fail in their 10th exams. And it was considered that maybe because there is less oxygen in the air, the students are not bright enough. But on deeper look, it was found that the context where they were in and what they were reading in their books was completely the opposite. At -30 degrees, they were learning F for fan or T for train, where no trains ever come to Ladakh. So the whole system of learning was changed. Textbooks were rewritten in Ladakhi and not in Urdu or English. Instead of rivers and rice, books talked about barley and glaciers. Students were taught by what they do so that they could relate to it. Farming, cows, solar devices, and the results dramatically improved to 75%. The other thing was done, which is lacking in our Indian system, is experiential learning, learning by doing. there was a PhD program I was talking to in one of the IITs where they were working on clay, and the students had not touched clay while they were doing that PhD. That is the kind of divorced method of education that we have, where it is all paper books, paper knowledge, paper exams, and paper degrees. Whereas in this experiment, it was the students who were on the driving seat. They were running the school like a democracy with two parties where they would elect the various functionaries and run the school. They would learn through experience. The books came alive because of what they learned by applying various theories in their real lives. And, as I said, there was a huge success. The students who were looking after guests who visited campus later on went on to set up their travel agencies. The students who were preparing various forms of processed foods like jams went on to set up their processed food companies and so on. And these were all 16-year-old students, matriculation students, who when given the right amount of contextual and experiential learning could become entrepreneurs from the age of 18 onwards. So we thought, is it possible to extend this to higher education where we have 18+ students who are more mature and who have all the passion, all the dynamism, all the idealism to change the world, and we, because of the industrial revolution method, we hold them up in rooms like these where they are raring to go out and do stuff, and thereby curtailing their creativity. So the project now that we are setting up is this university, which would work with several innovations in the context of the mountains by using the resources which are available locally and the wisdom of the indigenous knowledge, combined with cutting-edge technology. So this is the vision of the university, where there would be several schools. For instance, the School of Applied Ecology will not make the students learn from books and write in exams, but would address issues which exist in that ecology. For instance, lack of water, lack of greenery, problem with flash floods, given the glacial melts. So the ice stupas, which is everybody must be knowing here, are conical, water bodies which use the wastewater of winter, so that in the springtime, when farmers need water, it melts to give that water. So this is an indigenous research, innovatively done to address the local problem, and is finding applications now in Switzerland with the reverse technology method. Mostly India imports technology. Now Switzerland is making their ice stupas because it is not only something for the water for the farmers, but also gives avenues for winter tourism. Similarly, and this is what you see, the desert. This is the water which has been frozen in winters. Because the reason this place remains a desert is because in springtime, glaciers have not yet started melting when the farmers need water. So this starts melting, and this is the kind of greenery that has been created with this innovation. Similarly, this is the valley before the intervention. And because it has no trees, when it rains, the water just flows and creates a flood. So what creates a flood creates a drought later because the water has not recharged the springs. So with this innovation of digging trenches, making swales, planting trees, it is proposed to hold the water, recharge the springs, thereby stopping the floods and the drought situation. This is again a local indigenous innovation to solve a local problem. I was in Munich earlier this last year, and they had a conference on how to solve the problems in Ladakh, and I told them very politely that, thank you very much, but more than needing inputs from Munich or New York, we would rather go back 100 years and see what we did as a society in Ladakh, because in Hindi or Sanskrit, there is no word called sustainability, because there was no other way to be. Unfortunately, the colonization of India, and even after 70 years, we have not decolonized our minds, that we are following the Western modern of development or urbanization, which is divorced from ecology, from education, from sustainability, and then we go back to solve the problems once again. For instance, in Gurgaon, we cut, copy, paste the glass facade buildings, which work well in Europe, because it is temperate zone, it's cold, and you need glass to absorb the heat. But in Gurgaon, you first absorb the heat, and then you retrofit ACs to cool it, thereby creating carbon footprint 2 times over, once during glass production and then during AC. So the whole approach of education is, and this should have happened in 1947, we should have set up a ministry, we set up many ministries, we should have set up a ministry of decolonization, which should have re-looked at how we lived, and not to stay back in the past, but be that bridge to the future, but in our own way, what we call our swadharma, who we are. Instead of imitation, there had to be innovation even at 1947. So in a small way, we are bringing that back now, and for which we were awarded the Rolex Award of Enterprise. The School of Sustainable Habitats will also take a look at what worked in the past. Just as we wear different clothes in different climes, we should have different homes, because they are a larger clothing material. But again, all across India, we have same cement homes. Even in Ladakh, people have started building cement homes, which they have to then use fossil fuel to warm when it is -30. But when we went back and studied, and one of the reasons in favor of cement is that it lasts long. But that was demystified when we found that 800-year-old palaces built of clay and mud were still standing strong. And cement homes have a life of just 60 to 70 years. So the School of Sustainable Habitats will work on building eco-resilient homes by drawing inspiration from our indigenous wisdom, blending it with modern technology, and coming up with buildings which stay at +15 degrees when it is -20 outside without any heating, any fossil fuel. And I told this in Munich, that this room, it was winters, and I told them that this room which you are maintaining at +15 by using so much of coal and thermal energy is what we have designed just by absorbing the direct solar rays using this Trom wall technique, which had been there in the past, but which had to be rediscovered and modernized. And this is what can be created out of clay homes. And it is a pity that India, which has about 60–70% of clay homes, does not have an institute where you study earth architecture. There is one in France, in Crater, which is earth architecture. So we have not thought of having an earth architecture building, even after 70 years. Just as we have not thought of reviving Ayurveda, which is holistic healing. And this is the decolonization that we have to individually, as a collective, as an educational institute, as a country, take a look at. Because there is so much that India had and has, which should not be lost. And at this point, I would like to bring in one relevant point of the medium of instruction. Unfortunately, English is the medium of instruction in this country. You would be surprised to know that while we may boast of having second largest English speakers in the world next to the US, but it stands only at 12 crore, which is 10% of our population. 90% of our bright, dynamic kids do not achieve their full potential because when it comes to higher education, they are stalled by their limitation. We all consider ourselves bright here. What if we were to start suddenly tomorrow, if we had to do everything in French or Persian? We would not be as bright as we think we are. So we are stopping 90% of our youth from becoming a part of the mainstream and devoting their best because we have not thought about what do we do with indigenous languages in this country. And it is not just the problem of having them out of our mainstream. It is also the loss of vernacular that happens with the loss of vernacular language. There were a lot of architectural techniques. We did not have a single-size brick in India. That was something the Britishers had to impose so that they could control. In vernacular architecture, temples and different things had different sizes of bricks. So the richness and diversity of our indigenous and vernacular, which we are losing because we have everything in English, is another thing to look at. So again, when something new is done, it takes time, but after 30 years, the building that our school is made of was awarded the Global Award for Sustainable Architecture in 2017 and also a Terra Award in France. Though 20 years ago it was ridiculed as something that would not work because it was not cement. Similarly, School of Responsible Tourism, and I won't go into the details of it, but tourism, while it is positive, it also has, as we all know, its negative sides, unless it is integrated with community. 500 villages of Uttarakhand have become empty because of urban migration, and the same is happening in Ladakh. So is there a way to kickstart tourism so that the villages are empowered? So we have built farm stays and homestays around our university where we encourage our guests to stay. And the women of the house make money, allowing their sons to come back because they see their mothers earning more. So several innovative things in responsible tourism happening, including making ice hotels. This year we started with ice cafes inside the ice stupas. And 12 schools are planned to be built in Hayal with this kind of a theme of innovation and entrepreneurship. And these are our principles. Basically, to wrap up by saying that we need to be contextual in our education. We need to go back to indigenous wisdom, not just theoretical, but experiential learning. And, though I would take a minute more, but I would like to say that we are making our education free because the students will work in these initiatives which would make money and sustain the university so that as per the ancient system of India, education will be free because not every student can pay with money, but he can pay with his sweat and creativity. Thank you.